Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of The Comic Source. I'm your host, Jace, along with Blake Whitlow. Quick reminder, don't forget that the reading order that Blake put together that we're following is in the show notes. Highly encourage you to go check it out. Blake's been adding even more context and whatnot about why issues go where they do and adding other notes and whatnot. For instance, the book that we're going to talk about tonight, Spawn 65, is an excellent jumping on point. If you haven't read any of Spawn up to this point, you can kind of jump on 65 and get a recap. And I mentioned this last time. I sort of feel like part of the reason this is the case is because this came out when the Spawn movie was hitting theaters. And so if somebody wanted to go and pick up a Spawn comic and get the context, kind of the story up to that point, they could pick this up. And you see it on the cover. Let me go ahead and share my screen. It's kind of a photo cover that shows a scene from the film. And I actually really don't care for this cover, to be honest.
I don't care for it either. Of all the scenes in that movie, why this one? Like, there's so many great scenes in that movie. Why this one?
Yeah, I feel exactly the same way. So It's not a terrible cover. It doesn't really do anything. So
and it doesn't even represent like any of the story content that's happening in the issue.
No, not at all. So but anyway, when you check out the credits, story by Todd McFarlane, pencils by Capullo, McFarlane and Chance Wolfe on inks, Tom Orzechowski on letters, Brian Haberlin and Dan Kemp handling the colors, cover and design by Brent Ash. Get the recap there. All that action that we had last issue is recapped, but this one actually starts off with a look at Sam and Twitch in Rat City talking to Cogliostro. Now, because this is somewhat of a recap issue, I won't go so far as to say McFarlane falls back into a bad habit of walls of text, because when he used to, I mean, don't get me wrong, this issue's all walls of text. But when McFarlane used to do that, his wall of text used to be describing what was happening in the panel, what was happening in the action. It was kind of redundant. At least here, we're getting some great contextual art from Greg Capullo, but a lot of times, the text that McFarlane's giving us isn't necessarily describing what we're seeing. There's a lot of montage pieces, and you'll see when we go through. So it all starts off on this first page, as I said, Cogliostro talking to Sam and Twitch, and it's this first page is kind of setting up where we are, right? Where they talk about Rat City, they talk about the bodies that are found there, and how it's not a good place, basically. How kind of the evolution of Rat City, if you will. So we start getting some context, some recap from Cogliostro, these two detectives who've been searching for Spawn for a long time and have been a big part of the story. We kind of get their view, their context of the way they see Cogliostro, which I think is interesting because we only ever have gotten Cog through the eyes of Spawn. But they're also very impatient, especially Sam. We know that they want answers, because you see on that following page there's a Billy Kincaid stabbed with the popsicle sticks and the ice cream scoop and whatnot that he was stabbed with when Sam and Twitch found them in the office, and Sam's like, we want some answers. In a way, he blames Spawn for them getting fired because this kind of started the series of events that got them kicked out. And so Sam's like, I want justice. I'm not going to rest until this is done. And Cog tells him, well, he was left in your office for a reason, right? It wasn't random. So and again, Cogliostro has informed Sam and Twitch that he's undead, basically, right? That he's this force. And Sam and Twitch last issue were kind of taken aback by that, didn't necessarily know if they believed it or not. So Cog tells him here, he's unsure of himself. He's off balance. He's going back to what he knows best, which is he's going to kill people, right? And he's this newly recruited warrior. he's not really any different than any other previous warrior of hell. And, these two guys are cops. They've spent their life solving murders and crime and whatnot. And Cogliostro's just told them that hell spawn, Al Simmons, whoever, is out there just murdering willy-nilly. So they're definitely taken aback by that. And so it's definitely Cogliostro trying to explain to them, like give them context into who Al Simmons is. And in doing so, it's almost like Sam and Twitch are the POV characters for any new reader. As Sam and Twitch will come to understand who Al Simmons is as Spawn, you think a new reader would as well. So Cog says, as much as Al intends to be good, you got to remember who he was in his life, and being good, accomplishing the mission, obtaining his objective meant killing people, right? Meant having justice meted out. And in the case of this child molester, that meant murder, right? That meant killing him. So you have to understand that this is the language that Al Simmons is speaking in, if you will. And Burke's like, Sam Burke is like, what are you talking about? Like, he's not quite understanding what Cogliostro is saying. He's still thinking in kind of, normal terms, if you will, like mortal terms. And so Cog is like, okay, let me explain this to you. There's been many generations over the years of these Spawn characters. It has to do with the eternal battle between heaven and hell. And, I was a part of it at one time. And now this guy, this Al Simmons, the man, he once was like you, he was human and he was a soldier and he did what he was told. And he ended up paying for that loyalty with his life, because once he started having some moral questions about what he was doing, the powers that be took him out. And I will also point out on this particular page, when they're talking about Al being taken out, notice who's there. Not Chapel, Jason Wynn and Jessica Priest. So leaning into that idea that, yeah, it wasn't Chapel that killed Al Simmons, but Jessica Priest. So important to note that. And so then we're told, yeah, he was murdered by his own people. He was betrayed. He had been a hero. He had saved the president from assassination. And, this was what he got. He was killed, and then he got a chance to come back. And that's who Spawn is. And Sam Burke is like, what, you mean he's a zombie? Like, well, maybe not a zombie in the way you think of a zombie, but a tool, a pawn of hell, being trained to lead the army to help in that war that will happen, that you probably think of as Armageddon. And all the while they're talking, Cogliostro is leading Sam and Twitch to the new sort of dwelling place of Spawn, I guess you'll say. It's like, I want you to see something, because I think it will give context into what I'm talking about. And when they see this new throne, they're pretty taken aback, right? And we're told that it's made of garbage and trash and bones and bits of wood, moldy garbage, but also components of human remains, right? Some that are fleshy and fresh, and others that are decomposed. But the whole throne here is crawling with maggots, thousands of maggots, and it gives the illusion of movement. And obviously, Sam and Twitch are like, what the fuck? Like, what is this? Explain it to me. And Cogliostro is basically saying, yeah, this is the way that it feeds, the way that it energizes itself. All these, again, it's not, these aren't these fleshy remains, these human remains aren't people that Spawn has murdered. They're people that, the city, drug dealers, prostitutes, whatever, and they're dumped in Rat City and eventually find their way to Spawn because, the worms and whatnot that absorb the potential for evil from these corpses that then turn around and give that energy to Spawn. And it's interesting that Cogliostro shows him that and then immediately follows it up with, hey, let me tell you about the good of Al Simmons. It's almost like, let me show you the reality, But then also let me explain that, what's happening to Spawn isn't all his fault, and so he explains to some extent about how Al Simmons' capacity for love was used against him. He calls it love. He refers to it as mankind's greatest strength, but also his most damning weakness, because that's what was used to return Spawn. His love of Wanda was what was used to trick Al Simmons, what was used to bring him back to life. And so then we see, obviously, the couple most important people in Wanda's life now, Terry Fitzgerald and Cyan, and Cog tells him that too. Like, not bad enough that he loses his wife. When he comes back, he finds that his wife has married somebody else and has a kid that he wasn't able to give her. And you have to think about what kind of man Al Simmons was, what kind of man would look at that and not just feel like he was a failure. All along, he was never able to give her a child. And he also tells them that it's been 5 years. We've talked about that extensively, how it's been 5 years that Spawn's been gone, that Al Simmons has been gone. He comes back and everybody else has moved on, and they think of him fondly when they think of him at all. But, they're just in such different places. And it's not only Spawn that came back, but this symbiote as well, this creature that's bonded with him, which is part uniform, part protector, and it's a part of who Al Simmons is as well. So again, he's Cogliostro's spilling the beans here, but also again, in terms of a new reader, this is all you need to understand who Spawn is as a character and what's gone on. And then we get another little collage here with kind of the heaven part of it, with God in the guise of the old woman and Angela. And Cogliostro's talking about kind of some of the things that Al has gone up against and how he doesn't really get a chance to ever catch his breath, because there's all these threats coming at him from, all these different angles. And even though he appears to be somewhat human, he's not. He's no different than the other forces of heaven or other forces of hell made out of necroplasm, and just a part of something that is bigger than him. And we also see Malebolgia there, and the Violator in his clown form, and Cogliostro saying, yeah, it's about the eternal battle that preparing for Armageddon, like I said earlier. But he also explains something that's at the root of Spawn, and I've talked about it before, but how it's not just because you end up on the side of hell, it's not cut and dry where you're bad, right? And if you end up on the side of heaven, it's not cut and dry that you're good. It talks about, the dispensation of souls, and either side can pick any spirit when it dies. And, it's the reason we're actually told that Attila the Hun is in heaven. Right. And that strikes a chord with Sam. He's like, wait, you mean so heaven and hell are just having some kind of draft pick with our souls? It doesn't matter if we're good or bad or whatever. And Cog's like, no, you're not listening. It's the fact that as humans, as beings, we all have the capacity for extreme good, and we all have the capacity for extreme evil. So in that way, you can go to either place. Either side can pick you, and then they will train you, or they will manipulate you, or they will try to figure out a way to have you lean into the side that they want you to lean into. And that's really what it's all about, right? Al Simmons has been picked, drafted, if you want to use that term, by hell, by the forces of hell, and he's being manipulated so that he gives in to those traits that are better for hell. That's why he was killing people last issue. That's why they want to keep him off balance. Don't give him a chance to be the best version of himself, which is why you let 5 years go by. Make sure Wanda is married. Because we talked about it last time. There's a different version of the story out there where Al doesn't piss off Terry Fitzgerald, where he goes, black ops. He confronts Jason Wynn. He doesn't kill anybody. He doesn't lose his Al Simmons face. And the whole story is completely different. But that's not what happens, because that's not what hell wants to happen. It's not what hell needs to happen. So it's a very interesting way to look at it. And the way that Cogliostro puts it is, he says their effect has been to help unbalanced Al's already unbalanced state of mind. Like this is already something that's very hard for, your average person to deal with. And they keep throwing things at him and not letting him catch his breath and manipulating him and doing all that kind of stuff. So at this point, it's not like we've really learned anything new. It's all kind of recap up to this point. But then right here at the end is where we get the information that will make you go, wait, what? Because Sam says, well, there's still two things that are bugging me. Like, how do you know all this? Number one. And two, you still haven't explained why Spawn put Billy Kincaid in our office. And Cogliostro says, well, the answer to your first question is I know because I know. That's just the way it is. And he does say Al's not the first person to bear this curse. Others like me have had to be cursed with this as well. And the answer to your second question is something you might not want to know. But of course, Cog's going to tell him anyway, probably with a big shit-eating grin on his face. It says, every king needs the help of loyal knights. And when every new hellspawn appears on Earth, they seek out people that they have things in common with in their quest to recapture their lost humanity. And Al Simmons, Spawn, has chosen you. He's chosen you two. And the bloody body of Billy Kincaid was kind of the token that sealed that pact, right? Tying you two together with Spawn forever. And I should say that Al Simmons, when he did that, Spawn, when he did that, he was unaware, still too early. He was just acting on instinct. But regardless of that, regardless of whether he's conscious of it or not, he did pick you, and he's now your new master. You are here to help him dispense justice. So
it's an interesting way that he phrases it, is like, why use the term master? Like, he's the boss. And just in the previous issue, the previous episode, at the end of the confrontation with Jason Wynn, Spawn himself, Al, uses a similar kind of terminology. It's like, I'm your master now. So I'm wondering if there's more to like read into that.
Yeah, I mean, he's got the throne that they just showed him, and they've talked about him being the kingly figure for the homeless guys, and now it's like like they're ramping up that. McFarlane's ramping up that imagery, that idea of Spawn being royalty, or being kind of some sort of lord of hell that is establishing some sort of beachhead on Earth to rule people, to give orders, to sit back and manipulate events, himself.
Maybe he's more than just a minion of hell. Maybe he's trying to become something more. And that's something that Cog has been telling him the whole time. Stop playing into hell's hands and think for yourself.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And the only thing that I'm disappointed is that you would expect Sam to like flip out, be like, he's not my master, he's a murderer, blah, blah, blah. We don't get any of that. We just get what Cogliostro says, and then we get a picture of Spawn. We're told he's returned to his sanctuary with fresh bloodstains on his hands, and we know those bloodstains are from the battles that he had last issue. The other thing that I'll say is this portrait view side portrait view of Spawn from Greg Capullo is fantastic. With you can see how he's definitely returned to his old visage. All the skin has sloughed off, and he looks horrific again, and just a really, really powerful image from Capullo. And really, I wonder how much all the hard work he had to do last issue really led into this issue, which seems like it was, a little easier. Everything is in the background is black. These montages, I'm sure, took time, but I mean, it's a series of double page splashes and single page splashes. There's not really anything with panels. I mean, there's some pages where it's montage where he's got to draw, three different images, but still, I think this is probably in a way a chance for him to catch up as well. And I don't say that to say the art, that he was lazy or the art's not good. I mean, I think it's fantastic, especially with the black backgrounds. It definitely evokes a certain mood, and that mood being perfect for a Spawn comic. So I think this does a couple of things for a new reader. Obviously, it brings you up to speed, but I think it also gives you a good idea of what Spawn is like. So this is not a comic for kids. This is not a comic for the, faint of heart. It's brutal and it's bloody and it's gory and it's supernatural and it's extreme in a lot of ways. So it's a fun issue, but if you have been reading all of Spawn up to this point, a lot of it is review up until, we get that new information that, oh, and by the way, Sam and Twitch, you're loyal knights to Spawn and he is your master. I mean, that's important.
Loyal are they yet though? They just found out. So next issue and going forward, we'll kind of see their reaction to that.
Yeah, I'm real curious to see what that reaction is. So
it's like you're a detective and you're just working cases and stuff, and then you find out one of the suspects this whole time, oh yeah, he's your master. What? No.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, okay, dude, you're crazy. Obviously, no one's my master.
This murderous monster that sits on a throne made out of dead bodies, garbage, and maggots is my master.
Lost me my job and my career.
Yeah. I don't think so. Yeah. So, but anyway, not much more to say. Like we said, this is a lot of recap here, but definitely a solid issue. Great art by Capullo, and yeah, more to come with the analysis of how Sam and Twitch react to that news that Cog has dropped on them. I'm sure. I'm sure they're gonna. It's gonna be one of denial and no, we don't work for him, and so we'll see how that all plays out. Anything else?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, they haven't really seen any kind of supernatural events play out. A little here and there, but they've always been on the fringes of it. So being told up front, oh yeah, there is a heaven, there is a hell, this and that. And it's like, this is a guy that they just met in an alleyway on the way to investigate, a suspect.
Yep.
Like how reliable, how much are they investing their trust into this guy that they just met? Okay, cool. We can learn some information about our suspect from this guy. But, obviously hell isn't real. Heaven isn't real. Like he's getting all crazy and stuff. I'm wondering how, their mindset kind of, how much are they actually taking at face value?
Well, they're being told this. Yeah, they're being told this by what appears to be a homeless man in an alley. I kind of think Sam and Twitch are like, all right, this guy's had a little bit, too much LSD in his life or whatever. At one point, Sam even threatens Cogliostro, like, hey, we'll give us the answers we're looking for. We'll take you downtown. It's funny. Sam definitely acts like he's still a cop. Even when he first shows up at the alley, he's flashing some sort of badge. So that's interesting as well. But yeah, we'll definitely see the fallout of this in some upcoming issues. So we thank everybody for joining us as always. Really appreciate it. And we'll talk to you next time.
Later.